Hello, my name is Rich Howard, owner of Architectural Builder Supply, and this video is to talk with you about our ability to manufacture any type of custom conversion plate, adapter plate, maybe a filler plate that you might need for a particular application. What I mean is this: over the years, lock sets become discontinued, and we're talking about mortise locks, or we're talking about pre-assembled locks, or we're talking about exit devices and trim, anywhere where you have holes that are going through a door. So what often happens is a client needs to put on a new lock. You can't get the old lock, it's been discontinued, but there's one and will require some new holes through the door. And the problem is you're left with some old holes. So there's lots of ways to potentially mitigate that, but generally replacing the door outright is the least desirable. You may have a door that is protected by historical sort of code requirements that it cannot be changed, and if it were to be changed, it would be quite exceptionally expensive. You might have a scenario where it's just not practical to replace the door, or it's significantly more expensive. You might have a situation where you want to consolidate a couple of different functions into one sort of unified piece of hardware on the door by maybe putting closing up some old holes and installing some new hardware. But you need some sort of a plate to help dress all of that up. And dress plate is actually a good term for it as well, a very common term that's used. So the example of this is one that's relatively simple and straightforward. And this client has a door. He's in San Francisco, and I've been to San Francisco, and there's a lot of unique architecture that's there. The homes could have been built a year ago. They could have been built decades ago. And this client has the front door of a building that's been converted into a multi-tenant commercial address where there's multiple commercial tenants in this building. Well, the front door, it's from the 1930s, and it's not practical to replace it at all. He's not obligated by historical mandate to do no construction without prior approval. But this is a 2¼ inch thick. It's actually 2 1/8, so it's odd right there. It's of what I believe to be rift red oak, because I can see the fleck that's present in the veneer, or in the lumber, actually. This door probably has, it could be, it certainly is solid red oak. It might be smaller pieces glued together or laminated together, but it's not it's certainly not a composite type core. So it's a solid, beautiful door that has glass installed, that has decals and whatnot on the door. It has unusual bars or trim or mutton bars that detail the perimeter of it. So the door is beat up, old, and used, but it's intact. It has complete integrity. It continues to work just well, but it's been worn with the years, but it still works. Replacing it would be exponentially more expensive than a conversion plate. So this client currently has a residential caliber electronic lock. This used to be a building used in a limited low volume residential application. Well, now it's being used in a commercial setting where there's a lot more traffic of not only the tenants, but their clients as well. The client needs to upgrade the caliber of that mechanical combination. So the client wanted an alarm lock DL2700 WP, an electronic combination lock, quite simple and straightforward, a robust lock that's been on the market for a real long time, probably over 20 years by this point. And they're going to pull off an old Schlage residential caliber lock that's just not up to the function. And I played no role in directing them to alarm lock over Schlage. Schlage manufactures quite robust locks that will do this job based on the hardware that's on the inside of the door, but that's all being replaced. I believe that he was in contact with a local locksmith who steered them in that particular hardware direction. I just came in to help solve the problem of having to make all of the hardware work together on this old lock. The other piece of the hardware was a separate single-cylinder Schlage deadbolt that's installed. So the client has this door. He's going to pull all these locks off, and he's got all these holes left. So I say to the client, send me a sketch, just a sketch of, show me everything. The width of the stile. Show me where the holes are currently located. Be sure to be mindful of where the new lock is going to be installed with the center line of the latch bolt, as it's dictated by the presence of the strike plate. So the strike plate in the frame saying that's where your latch bolt has to be. Where does the rest of the real estate come into play on the lock set itself? It's an alarm lock DL2700. So 2 1/8 hole with lots of stuff above that 2 1/8 hole. So being mindful of where does the strike plate dictate the location, the vertical location of the lock, the rest of the alarm lock, and then where's that deadbolt up above. So the client gave me a quick sketch, and this printed out so poorly that you really can't see the notes, but along with this video, there is a link to the original document where you'll be able to see it. And he just calls out the dimensions. So basically tells me that's where the 2 1/8 hole is for the deadbolt. That's where the 2 1/8 hole is for the strike plate location. This is where the DL27 is going to reside with its required function holes. This is the height, this is the width. And then the client and I had a conversation about now. His stile width was unusual in the sense that it was, the conversation started with, I want a U-shaped door reinforcer. But lots of things made that basically impossible. First, thickness of the door. 2, to get the height he needed to straddle all of this, to cover all of that, forced into a 5-inch deep unit, which when measured on the outside, it's actually 5 1/8. Donjo, fantastic manufacturer of door reinforcing plates, latch protectors. Then his stile was only 4 3/4. This person's skill set, area of expertise, is something that does not include metalworking, doesn't include cutting, drilling, doesn't include really the time in their life to dedicate to doing this. The person has the skill set to do it, just not the time to invest into it. So the client, I believe, will be hiring a locksmith to do this work. But that wraparound plate was going to force to get a tall enough unit, which was maybe 15-inch, I forget, 5-inch wide. That's no good. Couldn't trim it all back. You've got the screw holes there. Plus, it would be made of stainless. That would be brutal to cut all that. So the conversation flows into, well, what's wrong with the door? Is the integrity of the door compromised? Is it cracked? Because I thought initially they want a door reinforcer because someone broke in and split the edge of the door. Turns out it's not. The fellow's just looking for a way to cover up all those old holes. So I said, well, let's just ditch that whole idea. Let's get you a lock and a deadbolt that's going to be capable of handling the door thickness, which will be approaching 2 1/4 when we're done. And let's get you a couple of flat plates. Tell me any height you want. Tell me any width you want. Tell me the location of all the holes. I don't care where they are. Located vertically and horizontally. We're going to put holes in it for screws, for the number 6 by 3/4 oval head screws. Tell me the base material you want it to be made of. Tell me the finish you want it to be made of on. And then as we started to discuss that, we determined, I let the client know that when you close that door, be sure that the plate that you're measuring, you're working on the clear stile width, not how wide, not the 4 3/4 inch width, because when the door closes, the door is going to make contact with the stop face. You don't want to have the heads of the screws or the plate coming between the face of the door and the face of the stop, because that will probably interfere the proper operation. So the client realized, okay, so let's make it a little smaller, but let's shift the holes so that they're not in the exact center of the plate to give the appearance of symmetry when the door is open. We're going to make it offset. We're going to make it a little bit smaller on one side than it is on the other side to account for the door stop and get it all moved over. So client sent me the original sketch. The template for the Schlage lock, that's just a 2 1/8 inch hole for the deadbolt. We're going to put a 2 1/8 inch hole. Here's the template for the alarm lock. You use one of the two holes, but it's determined that we were using the 7/8 hole for the non-fire rated door. So we've got these two holes for the bolts that go through. We've got this hole for the wiring harness. We've got the two through bolts. We've got the 2 1/8 inch holes, and then the semicircles for the prongs that would be on the back of that lock, which help prevent it from spinning. So we knew this. We knew where the client wanted the relationship of that bottom hole to be and where the top hole was to be for the deadbolt. So the bottom hole is this hole. The top hole is his deadbolt. We had no problem with the clearance. I then drafted this to the manufacturer, which is nothing other than drilling all of the holes onto a plate, giving all of the dimensions, a couple of notes identifying the diameter of the holes, etc., giving clear instructions. It's important because we were not doing them equal from either side to say that we're doing one of each hand, because he'll have one on the outside and one on the inside. Those will be mirror images, or if you're talking about door veneer, they'd be book matched. They would be symmetrical. The manufacturer, who I'm an epic fan of, came back with this, said approve it, sign off, send it back. So this was created out of this, which I used this based on this. All of these pieces of paper conspire to be a perfect solution for the client. What happens now? The client, by investing a small amount of money for some custom plates, because I'm not familiar with how the manufacturer is going to make these, but they're going to shear it's made of stainless with a satin finish, by the way, a brushed finish. Solid stainless steel, 050 thick. You can have it thicker. You can do a thicker stainless as well, but 50 thousandths. That would be the normal thickness of a kick plate or a push plate. That's going to cover the old holes, although the client might do a Dutchman, meaning cut some wood, pack it into the door, glue all of it, clamp it. And if you're going to do that sort of Dutchman work, use wax paper. When you take your plug, glue it, put it into the door, and you put blocks down and then clamp it, put wax paper. The wax paper will prevent the glue from sticking to it. You don't want the glue onto the blocks, the wooden blocks that you're clamping to stick to the face of the door, and you pull all that off and you're ripping off veneer. Wax paper is great. Be sure not to have too much glue. So the client may do a Dutchman to close off those holes, but the 50 thousandths holes, along with the fact that the lock sets over them, will be robust enough to cover it. The client does have an edge prep from the old deadbolt that was there that he needs to blank off, which we're just going to send him a typical 161 edge filler plate, a 2 1/4 by 1 1/8 wide steel plate that he'll just screw to the edge of the door to blank that off. He can also do a Dutchman there if he wanted. Dutchman's just the term for doing a plug. You're going to plug the hole, you're going to make the hole smooth and flush. It's a repair, really, is what it is, but it's a repair that involves giving the door the best shot at having original integrity. So he might blank all that off. The plate, 50 thousandths. The most durable, natural finish on base material that's possible, stainless base with a brushed finish, a very durable finish, is going to allow the client to get the new locks installed, salvage the door, do so in such a way that's not going to be very challenging for either himself if he elects to do it, or for the locksmith who's just going to walk in and put it all on the door. The plates will be there, the locks will be there, the lock will be there, the deadbolt will be there, the edge filler will be there. Frame filler as well for that deadbolt, because the location of the new deadbolt is going to be relocated because the original one was too close to the alarm lock. Okay? And this is a relatively simple example, but think about scenarios where you get into more dire circumstances, where you have lock sets that are truly impossible to replace. Whether it be some Locknetics Pro Series locks, Pro 993 exit device trim, we run into that a lot. They're Pro 5196 locks. Schlage Electronics makes replacements for that stuff, but conversion plates are really required. Monarch exit devices now, Falcon, well, they're 17 and they're 18 series devices. Much of that is no longer available, no longer possible to get our hands on. Sometimes you can work the new trim over the old preps. So what we look to do in instances like that is to be able to salvage a scenario without having to replace the door, without having to replace the hardware with hardware that's no longer available. We want to be able to salvage the situation. Conversion plates, dress plates, adapter plates, filler plates, all this stuff comes together in terms of a solution. Now, why didn't we just have a custom U-shape plate made? Because they're incredibly expensive. That's the bottom line. Several hundreds of dollars is something like that would cost because the setup time is so extreme. I don't know how this manufacturer is going to make those plates, what I was saying earlier. I know they'll share the material, and they probably have a CNC turret, a computer-controlled machine that's got die stock in it that will just come down and, boom, punch a hole right through it. Bam, 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 bam. Done. Done. It's beautiful. It's simple. We've done it many times in the past for people. Had a large aviation company in the Pacific Northwest, the largest aviation company, and they had some, not sure when the factory was built, but there were some doors probably from the 1960s there that they had some locks that were, you'd need a time machine to find any more of the locks. And the manufacturer's new locks, well, they would do the job, but you got all these holes. Made them up a bunch of custom plates with concentric circles to trim the material off, and worked superbly. Anyway, enough babbling on. My name is Rich. I'm owner of Architectural Builders. If you have any questions on how me or my company might be able to help you salvage material, salvage installations, and make the best of a less than perfect scenario, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. Thank you.